Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Sales. If you're looking for actionable insights and real-world tools to turbocharge your sales starting tomorrow, well, you're in the right place. Your host, Kay Miller, earned the affectionate nickname Muffler Mama when she sold more automotive mufflers than anyone else in the world. In this podcast, Kay will talk to another superstar woman in sales as they reveal uncopyable strategies you can use to rack up more leads, snag dream clients, and take your sales numbers through the roof. Stay tuned and get ready to make more sales and how about this? More money.
Today, my guest is Julia Carcamo, the author of Real Marketing and Casino Branding Expert. Julia has developed brand marketing for Caesars Entertainment, Wynn Resorts, and many more. Today, Julia is President and Chief Brand Strategist at J. Carcamo and Associates. Welcome to the podcast, Julia.
Hi, Kay. Thanks for having me.
So I'm fascinated by your story. I just read your book, Real Marketing, which I highly recommend. So
Thank
fascinating. And your story, I just can't wait to hear more about it. How you got started in the casino industry. And as we talked about, ended up with some pretty amazing feats, like producing one of the most famous commercials about Wynn Resorts. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Julia, so how did you get started in this business?
So marketing was always my goal from the moment that I started college. And I did a little stint as an intern at the zoo, which is very unique, doing more advertising and PR, which is where I thought my track would take me. And then somewhere along the line, I met some really dynamic people who were working in the casino industry, which was brand new here in the Gulf South. And I got my first job at a casino. I started a week before opening and it went bankrupt 9 weeks later. I have to tell you that it was a really bad experience for everybody, for me too, but I loved the industry. I really just connected to it. And so when I started looking for a job, I looked for another casino job and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear what grabbed you about it. But you did say you were an intern. You started out as an intern and you learned some important lessons or philosophies that have really carried you through the years, right?
Yeah, I can't even remember it was such a long time ago. As I said, it was in the last century, as the kids say these days. But I was working on a project and I think that I said to the marketing director, "Hey, can I do this for you?" And somebody who was already on staff, one of the marketing coordinators, said, "Way to make yourself indispensable, Julia." And I didn't realize that I was doing anything like that. But as my career has unfolded, I realized that I am always up for new projects. I love to get something new that's challenging. And so one of the lessons that I try to impart, and then I've also heard other women gaming leaders say is, don't say no to a project. Take a chance and learn something new.
That's a great philosophy. And that, of course, as you know, our brand new branding book, Uncopyable You, comes out today. And so being indispensable is part of your brand. As you said, don't say no to anything, and you'll be so valuable. And you said even as an agency now, you find yourself carrying that through, correct?
Yeah, one of the things that, I started just as a consultant and a lot of people will categorize us in that agency category, but I'm sort of the anti-agency. I mean, we can do all the things that an agency can do for you, but rather than tie somebody to a retainer, we really prefer to help you where you need our help the most. And if we can teach you to do something that gives you some kind of self-sufficiency, even better. I definitely think it is rewarded in return. We have long-term clients. We have great relationships with people. And that's the way we want to keep moving along.
I'm sure that makes you stand out, like you said, from other agencies. And you just quoted Jay Bear. And so it's teaching people the skills to do these things on their own, not necessarily be tied to you forever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I work primarily with regional small to medium operators, and those operators are traditionally Native American casinos. So I do work with some commercial casinos, but most of our work comes with the Native American properties. And for them, culturally, it's really important for them to gain skills and to be self-sufficient. And I want to be a part of their story. I don't need them to be a part of my story.
And as we talked about right before the recording, I live in Seattle, Washington State, and we have several big, huge casinos, and they are on tribal land. And you said you're actually coming to a conference at one of them, the Tulalip Casino, which is huge. And as we talked about too, these casinos are so much more than gambling.
Absolutely.
And you talked about MGM, not just a casino, but an entertainment mecca, because it needs to be so much more than just the slot machines, right?
Right. I think that particularly now post-pandemic, for many years, the casino industry was really resistant to any economic fluctuations. We learned we weren't resistant to a pandemic necessarily. We
No
really needed to
kidding.
reinvent what we were doing. This happened a lot in the Gulf South after Katrina too. In Mississippi, those casinos realized they had to be more than just slots. And they were never really just slots in a box, but they really looked to develop more resort amenities, more reasons to enjoy yourself. Now we compete for the Netflix subscription. We compete for all the streaming. I mean, you don't have to go to the theater anymore to get the best movies.
Exactly.
And now that you can sit home and find entertainment, we have to, as casinos, create more reasons for you to want to leave the home. And that has to be more than just a slot machine.
You talk a lot in your book about connection and finding the motivation. Why do people come in? And again, it's not just about, well, I can win a huge amount of money at the slot machine, which is, of course, nice. I haven't won a lot, but the big wins are always fun. But it's so much more than that, being a part of someone's life. And like you said, it's getting more complicated as the years go by. So many options, many of them in the home.
Yeah. And you know, the thing that a lot of people outside of the industry don't realize is that the majority of the people that visit a casino aren't looking for a jackpot. They're really just looking for what we call time on device. I want to take my $20 and I want to have a good hour's worth of entertainment. Or I want to take my $100 and have 3 hours of entertainment. I mean, it's people looking for entertainment. And traditionally, they've been social outings. So it's groups of people that go together. And now a lot of the manufacturers are actually creating games where groups of people can play together as well. So that social aspect has always been a part of the casino experience. Now it's become more on the forefront, especially as newer, younger customers are coming through the door.
I couldn't even think of the word jackpot, by the way, but yeah, it's, you know, people talk about how much they won or how much they lost, but if you're losing, so to speak, money, you're really just spending money on entertainment.
Right.
And like you said, if you can have fun for a couple of hours, you get some excitement and thrills in there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just you're paying for that time, and it's often much less expensive than a lot of the alternatives. Plus, as we talked about, these casinos now have fabulous entertainment. I mean, the concerts and the shows and the things that they have going on. I mean, you know, talk about spending money. They're very expensive, but they are worth it. Now, I'm so interested in the fact that so many entertainers have Las Vegas residencies. So, yes.
Yes. And now the Sphere in Las Vegas is taking entertainment to a whole new level. But a lot of the regional operators, what you've seen, the evolution has come in terms of food and beverage. So you'll see a lot of great food and beverage options that are coming out of these new properties.
And since you said you normally work with the smaller properties anymore, yeah, that sounds much more doable. You can make that experience, you can really impact that experience without the huge investment that it would take to build a Sphere, which I've seen from the outside, but I haven't been inside. Have you been inside yet?
I have been. It's life-changing.
I can't believe it. I want to go so bad. God, I want to go so badly. That's what I want to do. So I figured you'd been there. Can't wait. So let's go back. I just want to touch on some of your work with the big casinos. And you said the story of that commercial with the Wynn was quite interesting and entertaining. So I'd love to hear that.
So there's so many facets to that story because Mr. Wynn has always been a very creative person. And so he was intimately involved in the creation and the concepting of this commercial, which entailed in many situations ferrying a helicopter to do that shoot from LA to Las Vegas multiple times, daily check-ins with the construction crew to clean up the building, because for some ungodly reason that year, we had a hugely wet monsoon season. And on a construction site, that means that all the dust is sticking to that beautiful glass.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Didn't think about that.
And in high definition, it shows. So there was daily check-ins with construction as to the condition of the building and when it was going to get finished cleaning, bringing a helicopter in, and Steve watching the dailies and not liking the sweeps that the helicopter was doing. It's too high, it's too low, it's too fast, it's too slow, it's not getting the right angle, the light was wrong, the sun was wrong. And on the day that we had the perfect weather, lighting, helicopter, he was in a huge meeting and we literally had to pull him out of the meeting to get him over to the property.
Now the time it's like having a baby. Now it
really was.
now.
And like I said, because he was so proud of what he was creating in that commercial, that he literally left this man sitting in his office and said, I'm going to be right back.
And you know what? I just realized we should probably describe what the commercial is in case someone hasn't seen it. I just went and rewatched it. Steve Wynn is standing on the top of that building. So was he really standing then on the top?
He was. We had a photographer who had gone up to the top of the building to just get some area shots. And when I mentioned it to Mr. Wynn, he said, "You've been on the top of the building?" And I thought for a moment, was I not supposed to be there? And so I said, yes. And he said, well, if you can get up there, I can get up there. And the next day had to go to our lawyer to say, so is it okay if we put the chairman of the board on the top of the building for a commercial? And he said, what are you doing now?
Yeah, he might have used a profanity in there too. I don't know.
Rest assured, he was safely harnessed at the top of the building.
And you can tell. So it's really, and this was what, 11 years ago at least?
It was in 2000 and we shot it at the very beginning of 2005.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was a long time ago. So number one, they didn't have the CGI and the skills to make it look like he was there when he wasn't.
So they did, but he wanted it to be very authentic. And interestingly, we even shot the commercial on film, even though most things were being shot digitally by that point. But he really loved the feel that you got from the photography and film. And you can tell the difference when you really study it. But everything was real and authentic. And it was likely absolutely one of the most talked about commercials I ever did. But likely one of the most talked about commercials for Las Vegas, for a resort, for a casino. Maybe neck and neck with the Bellagio one, because the Bellagio, when it opened, had Andrea Bocelli and the fountains. And it was also, by the way, produced by the same art director, both of them.
Interesting. Well, so are you the one, though, that came up with that concept of having Steve Wynn on the top of the hotel?
No, it was actually Alan Kay, who also created the Bocelli ad.
Okay.
You might remember way back when IBM did this commercial with monks and they were copying.
Oh, vaguely.
Maybe
yes,
the Bible.
Vaguely.
They were doing it by hand, but then this copier came to be. He actually created that concept in that commercial as well. So he was an award-winning art director in that commercial space. And he had the idea when we talked about doing the image, we had the concept of doing the sweep and showing the grandeur of the property, which was still under construction at the time. So there was only a certain amount we could show of the building. And he had the idea, let's put Steve at the top of the building. That was never going to be the concept. That's why I had to go talk to the lawyer at the last minute. But it really turned out great. And I think that the thing that made it, a lot of people asked, was he on the building? Was he not on the building? Look, I can tell it was special effects and it wasn't. But the other thing that gave it like this humanizing point was at the very end, you heard Steve just say, "Can I get down now?"
I get down now.
And that was actually just caught on his mic. The mic was hot.
Really? Oh my gosh. Because it really is the perfect closer. And, sometimes in situations like that, something will be added that it's like, oh, that doesn't quite fit, but it's so perfect.
And he was supposed to only say, "Hi, I'm Steve Wynn, and this is my new resort, the only one I've ever put my name on." Boom.
So, hey, sometimes ad libs are the best.
Yeah.
It's not just Deadpool that can do ad libs, good ad libs, right?
Well, and we're very lucky that his ad lib was something that we could use and not.
Right, exactly.
It could have been so many ways. This helicopter came right up to him.
That is just really crazy.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the acclaimed book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition by Kay Miller. If you want to make more sales, you need to read this book. We'll even get you started with a free download of the first 2 chapters. Go to uncopyablesales.com/chapters to grab this offer right now.
Well, that's so fun to talk about, but we need to get a few more things covered here as far as branding. So you are really a branding expert. And again, what we talk about is personal branding. And you obviously have a personal brand. But like you said, you will do things that no one else wants to do. You won't say no. And that sets you apart from a lot of people right there. As far as corporate, you say if your operation is true to your brand promise, it is the one thing your competition will never be able to copy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for many of our clients, like I said, because we work with Native American, their brands are really, the foundation of them is the sense of that tribe and why that tribe exists and what it's trying to accomplish for its members. And that's not something that can ever be replicated. So the mistake that we see happening is when people don't lean into who they genuinely are and they try to be the guy next door or the guy down the block. You're never going to be that person. You're going to be an also-ran. And you don't want to be that. You want to be able to stand on your own, and you want the people to come to you that really kind of see themselves in your space and connecting to your brand.
And I'll talk about something in the book that we talked about right before the recording is the Lady Luck brand, which you said has been sold off, but that was so exciting. And I loved reading about that too, because as I said, it wasn't corporate. It wasn't stuffy. It was had personality. So why was that one of your favorite projects?
So, I think it may relate to part of your book about creating an attachment, right? An uncopyable attachment. This was a brand that actually was sitting in a file cabinet. It was nothing but paperwork when we decided, you know what? Let's dust this lady off and give her a new life and bring her out there, because there were markets that we brought it into that people remembered. They had memories of the Lady Luck. And some of them still had the tchotchkes that they had from Lady Luck from years before. So there was a deep connection already there. And people connected to it so easily and so naturally that you could only enhance everything else you were doing by using it, right? Enhance loyalty, obviously encouraging repeat visits to the casinos, which is extraordinarily helpful to us and crucial in many cases.
I just actually was going through my mind too about what you said about the Native American casinos, which applies to all of us, is that, who said you've got to be yourself, everyone else is taken? I think we look, how can we come across? What can we represent? Well, look inside at who you are and what you do represent authentically. And, don't be afraid to be genuine. So
Yeah.
both of those are great examples of that. As we're talking about your book and branding, as I said, our books have many similarities. You have some Jules rules. Again, you know what? I'm just going to say, maybe when you first thought of that, a friend suggested it. Did you think it was kind of corny?
I did actually. And it came out of a presentation that I made. But I was doing a presentation about, some rules of branding, and the agency that I was working with at the time said, we'll just call them Jules Rules. And he even made me a little logo and everything. And he then teasingly would call me Jules Rule. So every time I said something to the agent, he was like Jules Rule. But one of the things that I say over and over, it seems to come up a lot in our blog posts and things like that, is our first rule is know your audience, right? And really kind of understanding them and getting to know what their needs and their desires are and how they communicate and how they want to be communicated with. Everything that we do really kind of focuses on that audience, which is why it's our first Jules rule.
Yes,
The other ones are really, one of the things that I discuss a lot with properties is that the notion of their brand. I said the other day, I'm going to make a video about one of my pet peeves being when somebody says they're rebranding something and all they're doing is changing a logo or updating their creative. It just sort of stabs me in the heart. But I try to show them how brands are built from the bottom up. It's all the things that we put back there that customers don't see, but they feel, right? That really creates that brand. And how when you create your food and beverage outlets or your spa or your hotel offerings, how they need to relate and share some DNA with your brand. They all have to connect together, just the way we expect customers to connect with us. So they really are just kind of like foundational lessons that I've learned about branding.
Right. And that now seem probably natural and obvious to you. But as you said, I think people think a rebranding is a new color and a new logo and maybe some new advertising materials.
Right.
Where you really take the reader in your book. And I've read some of your blog posts, excellent. And I'm sure in your boot camp, as you said, bottom up and looking at what we call your moose. And you talk about buyers, personas, etc. And really digging into their experience.
Mm-hmm.
What is their experience going to be when they are in your property or in somebody listening, buying your product or service or dealing with your company? So,
and even like with my blog posts, I always have to stop before I write anything. I always have to think about who I'm trying to target with it. Because a person who is a marketing director at a small regional property is going to be looking for different answers than a vice president at a medium resort property or a general manager. But all three of them are people that I need to connect with and talk to because they're holding the purse strings that I could possibly access. And so I have to think about, how am I helping that person? And also that I can't help all three of them in any one blog post. So I do have to keep it very tight and very specific. And that's tough. For casino operators, I'm working with a property right now and we're talking about personas and their target audience. And one of the things I always say is it's not everyone. Yes, everyone may walk into your casino, but you cannot create a product for everyone because you will create nothing.
Exactly. You just can't try to sell to everyone. And yeah, with casinos, it's interesting too. I'm trying to think through it in my mind, but of course you have high rollers or big spenders or, consistent customers that come back again and again. So yes, you need to evaluate not only what those different customers need, but what experience that you want them to have, right?
Well, and that's a perfect way of thinking about it. So if you think about casinos, they generally have a handful of segments, right? So there's that high worth customer who doesn't come very often, but when they come, they spend a lot. There's that customer that spends a little bit less than them, but comes more often. Then there's a customer who spends probably more than I would, but comes very regularly. And then it starts getting down, right? People that spend less than that become more often. And then people who don't use their cards at all. So we don't actually even know what they're about because we have no data on them other than they spent money. And we don't know if that dollar came from me or that dollar came from you or that dollar came from Steve if neither one of us was using our card. So when you think about like advertising, somebody will request an ad for their restaurant or for, whatever promotion they've got going on. And they always, many of them will try to be really kind of more high end. I want my ad to look like Wynn. I want it to look like Bellagio. But when you think about it, you say, well, that high worth customer, they're not being motivated by an ad. They're being motivated by a relationship that they have more than likely with a host. Now, when they see an ad, it sort of endorses their decision to go to your casino. So it does have to respect them, but you're not going to motivate them with that. You're probably going to motivate that middle tier that if you've got think about it in the Seattle market, you could probably go to 2 or 3 different casinos. And so if you've got a choice of which one of those casinos to go to, all things being equal, right? Your offers are the same. They're equally distant to get to in terms of time. That ad may help you make that decision. So that's who you're targeting with that. And so understanding who you're doing what for is really important. Even though you have multiple segments that you talk to, your efforts have to be directed at one segment.
That's an excellent point. And we just have about 5 minutes. I do want to get into some of your experiences as a woman and a couple of the comments you made. But I do want to say that in your book, you did talk a lot about data. So you said who's going to use their card.
Right.
So you have developed loyalty programs that give people cards. So talk about that. Obviously, that gives you data.
Yeah. I mean, the casino industry has so much data, and we've always had it we've had it since the start of the players card programs. When you put your card into the machine sends data to the CRM that says this card has been put into this machine at this time. And then it starts to say, when you pull your card out, it sends the final record, says, hey, spent this much on this machine.
8 million.
Right. And so then with that data, we're able to say, well, you know what? We kind of like Kay. We kind of like how she plays. Let's send her a little offer and see if she'll come back. Let's send her 4 offers once a week and see if we can get her to come once a week. That's not too much to ask, okay, right? So we use data a lot. And now with advertising being more digital, with us using social media and so many other digital channels, we have even more data. So we can be much more specific in how we're using our efforts, our marketing efforts. And we can concentrate on the people that are going to respond the most rather than just spraying and praying.
Right. And of course, now that model is used for grocery stores and all kinds of places. Yeah. It's funny, in the back in the day, you'd get a frequent coffee buyer card or something, but they didn't have the data. They didn't use the data. They're just giving that as a reward. But now, of course, with technology, you can get all kinds of information. I know I'm marketed to in a lot of ways by places I shop. So, hey,
but as
As
consumers, don't you get aggravated when you get an email from somebody that you frequent a lot and you look at an email and you're like, they don't even know me? I say that I have a problem with a particular sunglass designer, and I probably have 20 pairs of sunglasses from them. And so when I get an email for a style that is nothing like what I would normally buy, I get sort of hurt by it because I've spent a lot of money and they should know. They can send me an email with the kind of style that I have bought, and I will probably snap it up because I have a problem. It's like,
right. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. The grocery store, I shop at a Kroger grocery store. They do a better job because they do serve up what I like to buy and maybe something related to what I buy. So it's a little more sophisticated than that. So
when we as consumers give permission to a business to know us better, we expect them to know us better. And this is why I always tell casino marketers, when you start collecting information, don't collect it if you're not going to use it.
Right. Good.
Because that's just
point.
a turn off.
That's a great point. So like I said, in the last couple of minutes, I just would like you to talk a little bit about being a woman in this industry. You made the comment that, is the industry male dominated? Not exactly, because management is male dominated, but employees are probably female dominated overall. So how do you feel, or how do you get respect, etc., insert yourself in these high level positions as a woman? Sorry, big loaded question there.
You know, unfortunately, in my personality, I've never been afraid to walk into a room. I may have taken a swallow of my water before walking in, but I'm not afraid to make my opinions known. That's a good and a bad thing, right? Because we also have to know how to make our opinions known in order for other people to respect them. A lot of that comes, though, from showing that I work hard and smart. And so I hope that people in the room will accept me. But, I've been working with an organization called the Global Gaming Women probably for about 12 years, maybe more. Since the very beginning, I worked for the first female president of a gaming company, and she really opened a path for all of us. And, as I was saying earlier, over 50% of the population of the workers is women, but not in management and certainly not on boards. But that's changing. That's changing because we've had people like Virginia McDowell, who paved the way as the president of Isla Capri, like Jan Jones, who was a Harris executive when I was there, but she had been the mayor of Las Vegas before then. And she has been banging the drum about women being in leadership positions for as long as I've known her. And so now the Global Gaming Women has these young women who are so energetic and are so inspiring, and they're creating great programs and lean in circles and ways for women to just become smarter and better and ready to take that call when it comes from the executive office.
Well, that's really exciting. And, one of the things that we've talked about is that you have been mentored and now you are a mentor.
Yeah.
So I think that there have been strides. There are strides being made. I talk about in my experience early on in my career, being in male dominated industries, sometimes the women were my worst enemies. They fought me where the men would support me. And so I love hearing about women supporting women. That's what this podcast is about. And you are a shining example and really super inspiring. This has been a really fun conversation. I so appreciate your time. I will put the links to your book in the show notes and your websites, because you have a couple. You have the boot camp and the J. Carcamo and Associates, and also your LinkedIn profile and ways to reach you. So thank you so much, Julia. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me. I've had a wonderful half an hour.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Sales, your source for secrets you can use to make more sales. Check the show notes for links and contact information. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please spread the word by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. You can always learn more by going to uncopyablesales.com/podcast. Until next time, go out and supercharge your sales like a true uncopyable rock star.